Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us David Jenyns, who is the founder of System Hub and Systemology. David, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So just by the name of your company and your book, System, I'm excited to hear about how you work with entrepreneurs on helping them systematize and make some of the processes they go through a little bit more crisp and well-defined for the purpose of efficiency. But before we get into that, give us a little bit of background on yourself and then what led you to focus on systemology.
I suppose like a lot of entrepreneurs, I've had a lot of different ideas and businesses along the years, but probably the one that I think is most impactful with the work that I do around systems was the digital agency, which I built from the ground up, worked in for 15 years, and then just found particularly towards the end of me working in that business, I was very much the bottleneck, that center cog in the machine that just held everything together. We had a small team of about 15 and working with a good number of clients, but I just found I was working really long hours, the 70-hour work weeks, working evenings and weekends, and it got to a point where there was that defining moment, that turning point when I found out we were pregnant, and I said to myself, I don't want to be that dad who's always too busy and never available for my kids to watch them as they grow up. So I thought, I've got to make a change. I've got to really learn how to build a business that works without me, how to make sure that it's still profitable, but something that doesn't require me on a day-to-day, and I get a bit more flexibility. And I mean, I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions around systemization and things like that. So I had some real key insights, and that's what started me on my journey.
Well, I love that because you're doing it for the purpose of family, because you've heard the old saying, if the person on their deathbed never wishes, I wish I spent more time at the office.
Exactly right.
Well, I'm sure some of your teachings tie into, the E-Myth concept of working on your business, not in your business. And I was literally talking to a CEO this morning who is finishing writing his book, and he's focusing on helping entrepreneurs who want to transition into, like, he calls it half retirement. So these days, CEOs don't want to retire and go play golf for the rest of their life. They'll get bored. People are still, busy and want to stay focused, but yet at the same time, they want their time back. So if your business cannot run without you, you have a job. You don't have a business. So to your point, what you're teaching people is how to get their life back and create some of these systems. And, systems, I would suspect, is a misconceived idea of automation. I'm sure there's automation involved, but a system could be a process of step 1 through 10 that this outcome is, something we want. And maybe it is an internal employee that's following this, but that's a system to know that everything that goes in on one end comes out on the other. So talk a little bit about the types of systems that you work with entrepreneurs on.
Yeah, I think one thing you touched on there as well that just sparked my mind is this idea of having the freedom to choose as a business owner, in that some people do want to have some more time off and go spend it with their family, or, dramatically remove themselves from the business. But then there are a lot of other people that want to lean into their business and put more work in, but they're finding that they're working on these repetitive tasks. So systems really is about giving freedom back to the business owner to choose, whereas a lot of business owners and CEOs, they just don't get the choice because they've built this machine that's dependent on them. And I suppose that the work that I do to help business owners and the types of systems that we work on, for me, whenever I look at a business now, I see a business as simply a collection of systems. regardless of which part of the business you're looking at, there are recurring, repetitive tasks that need to happen. Each of them have a consistent sequence that needs to be followed to deliver this consistent outcome. So I think of business in terms of sales, marketing, HR, finance, management, and I think of it in terms of these departments. And then underneath those departments, you've got a handful of systems that really drive the core of those departments. So it's a classic 80-20. You want to identify the 20% of the systems that deliver the 80% of the result. So you don't spend your time trying to create a system for how to take out the trash, because that's not necessarily going to impact your bottom line, but you might focus on how to have a process for the way that someone is invoiced, or the way that you might do lead generation, or maybe your sales process. So there's a process of going through and thinking about what those key systems are, capturing those and getting it documented, and trying to overcome a lot of the misconceptions and myths surrounding business systemization. I think that's my biggest mission at the moment. I'm trying to bring the excitement and sexy back to systems, because a lot of people just, they don't see them as interesting, and it's always, it's important, and I'll get to that later, but they never do, because everything else in their to-do list jumps in front of it.
Well, and another aspect that I think it is, well, we've always done it this way, and it's so uncomfortable, and it's I like using stories a lot, but there's an old story about this farmer that walks up to his neighbor's house down the road, and he's talking to him on the porch, and his bloodhound dog raises his head and howls in pain every couple minutes, and 10, 15 minutes in, the one farmer goes, "Why is your dog howling all the time?" And he goes, "Oh, he's laying on a nail, but he's too lazy to get up and move." Well, too many times business owners have that nail in their hide, and they're just not willing. It doesn't hurt that bad, but yet they've not been shown what it could look like if things were clicking right along. And I think that's a big aha moment. And for me, I've always been focused on, if I can do this, could I do it any better? And here's an example, a perfect example of with the podcast you're on right now. I used to, about 450 episodes ago, I used to email someone and go, "Hey, I'd love to have you on my podcast." And they'd say, "Sure. Does next Tuesday at 3 p.m. work?" And I'd go, "Oh, no, I've got an appointment. How about Tuesday at 5? And they'll get, "No, that does." And you're back and forth and back and forth. And then finally we land on a time, and then I say, "Okay, good. Here's the link to send me this." And then it's just back and forth stuff. Well, what I found was a system, and this is an automated system, but they, like what you came right through this same thing. Yeah. You went to a page and filled out your name and email, and here's my headshot, all the things that I need, so that I don't have to go back and forth and chase you down. And then when you hit submit, it said what time would work for you, and you clicked the time, booked it, you got the confirmation, it went on my calendar, and I got an email, and now here we are. And that's without you and I going back and forth 5 times. How much time could that save an entrepreneur over and over and over? And to your point about the business owner, boy, when you can start seeing that savings, maybe it's 12 minutes here and 2 minutes there, but that cumulative effect could be eye-opening for them to then turn that time into income and revenue generating tasks.
Yeah, I think the magic of systems happens with that cumulative effect. And that's also another reason some people find it hard when they get started putting these things in place, because the first system or two only saves them a little bit. And it's like they've still got their training wheels on, so they're not really firing the way that they'd like. But if you persist with it and you focus on those key systems that really impact the bottom line and the ones that save you the most time, within usually about 3 months, I find, of some diligent focus, that's when you start to see some breakthroughs. But most people have trouble persisting through that gap. And it's usually because there's a lot of these myths, I suppose, or beliefs they have about systemization. Things like, well, even if I documented my systems and processes, my team isn't going to follow them anyway, which kind of speaks to your point that you were saying before, around this idea of, but we've always done it this way. But the truth is, great team members will they like to know how to succeed. A players like to know how to win at the game. So a system and a process helps them understand how they can win. And yes, you'll get the most amount of resistance with your existing team when you first introduce them because they're used to the way that things were. But every new successive team member that comes on board after that point, that's all they ever know. So you get less and less resistance as you go. And now is the easiest time to systemize in just about all of history because there is so much change going on in the world right now, particularly with the COVID-19 stuff and a lot of people working virtually. Your staff, your prospects, your clients, everybody understands that there is change going on in the world and they have to accept this change. So the resistance to the introduction of systems is actually the lowest it will ever be. So it's the perfect time to apply.
Well, and I would think too that if you've painted the correct picture of what things will be, the future pacing of wouldn't it be nice if your business did this and ran like this, and then you get that picture in that business owner's mind, and then they can communicate that to their team. Like I would venture to say that there's some person doing a task right now that takes them 7 or 8 or 9 steps and maybe 30 minutes that if you said, hey, could I show you a way to get it done in half the time, even though their salary and they're going to get paid the same, they would love to see more efficiency anyway. It's a rewarding feeling.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of other reasons why a team member would want to systemize their role or get those sorts of things in place. Again, it all comes back to thinking about what's important for the team member. So that team member, if you say to them, hey, you know what it's like when you go on holiday and you take some time away from the business and you come back to 600 emails and 3,000 tasks that didn't get done or get moved because you weren't there to do it, and then you spend the next 3 months trying to catch up for your 1 week holiday. Well, by systemizing, we're able to have other team members step in and take over some of those roles. So when you come back, it's a lot less stressful, and while you're on holidays, you're able to actually disconnect and unplug. I've talked to many different team members who work in organizations as we're going through this systemization who say, oh yeah, even when I'm on holidays, I still have to check in on my emails just to make sure that nothing urgent has popped up. And there are other reasons as well. Like the way that a team member becomes more valuable, if you let them know, because there's sometimes a misconception that, by systemizing, I'm going to lose my job because now you can, get another team member to do it and I'm less valuable to the company. Whereas the reverse is true. If you have a team member that can take elements of their task, systemize it, create the systems and the processes, and then can get other team members to do that then frees them up to be elevated in their position, take higher levels of responsibility. So we always let people know by systemizing your role, you're actually becoming more valuable and able to elevate yourself up through the organization. So there's a bunch of different reasons, and and it's different for business owners and it's different for team members. You just have to think about the individual, what's important to them, because at the crux of it, systems is all about improving the business, making it more efficient, making it easier for people to do their jobs, making the business more valuable. Like there's a lot of benefits that come from it.
So when a business or an entrepreneur comes to you and says, I need your help, just let's do it, where do you start? How do you work with them to find the most critical places within their business to start? Because there's some that are going to be easier than others. There's some that's going to be more impactful. So where's a good place that you will be starting? So
I developed the system for systemizing a business.
Hey,
go figure.
You're
that's
your own best client.
Yeah, that's right, and that's really what systemology is. So,
yes.
I'm just in the process at the moment of launching a book. So, Systemology, which is just at systemology.com/book, and the first step in that, it's a 7-step process, and the first step is to identify what we call the critical client flow. If someone is listening to this right now, they can do this. They just take out an A4 bit of paper. At the top of the page, I want you to think about all the ways that you generate attention to your business, and you think about, is it Google AdWords, is it SEO, is it speaking from stage, is it running podcast adverts, is it, whatever it is. Start off at the top of the page thinking about how you generate interest to your business. Next level down, underneath that, think about how do you respond to an inquiry when the inquiry comes in, whether it's through the website or by them calling. Then underneath that, you think, and you're just working down the page here, you think about, well, how do I have a sales discussion, or am I issuing a proposal? What does your sales process look like? Then the next level down, how do you take money, as far as like, do they do a deposit? Do they pay up front? Then next level down, how do you onboard that customer? Then next level down, how do you deliver your core products and services? And then the last one is, how do you get them to repeat? So I just think in terms of, on an A4 bit of paper, I use little boxes to sort of represent each of these different actions. I get them to think very high level, no detail here. Like in the boxes, you're really only putting 2 or 3 words. Yeah. You might say, answer the phone and the website. It might be, for onboarding, setting them up inside a project management platform. Whatever that is, you just start from getting customers, selling customers, onboarding, delivering, and getting them to come back. By just focusing in on that area first, that will get you started on systemizing the right things. That's a way to identify the way that the business makes money, because if you can systemize the way that the business makes money and get it to work without the business owner or any team member dependency, you want to remove that. By doing that, that makes your business so much more scalable. It opens up so much more capacity, which then makes it much easier for the business to make money. So I always start there. We draw it out on an A4 bit of paper, and then we do have a discussion, though, and we talk about what problems you're having in the business. And then within my critical client flow, we try and narrow in to the part of the critical client flow that might solve a problem that they're currently aware of. They might say, I don't have enough leads. Okay, we'll focus in on your lead generation systems. Or, hey, I don't have... I keep on having these problems with my clients. They're hopping on the phone and annoying me, following me up, asking me very basic questions, and then we'll go, great, well, you might not have an onboarding sequence for the customer. So that helps to kind of channel it a little bit more, and that's usually the best place to start.
Yeah, to get some momentum and quick wins. You could have like a really big one, but it takes 19 steps, and then you know that you're going to lose them halfway in. So getting some of those quick wins, I think it really is a great point, and that's awesome. What are some of the typical industries that would need most systemization, or does it apply to any kind of business?
I'm a little bit biased. I think it applies to every business, because I see every business as a collection of systems. But the ones that, there are a range of industries that immediately get systems and they resonate with the idea of systems. I've seen, obviously things like maybe manufacturing, but then you look at things like, digital agencies. That was the business that I had systemized and then actually ended up selling that business. But that business, I think I tend to attract those types of people into my world. But then engineers, accountants, bookkeepers. But then I've had a variety of different companies, everything from immigration, like people who help to immigrate to Australia. I've had a dog food company. I've had a doggy daycare company. I've had actually, there you go. There's a bit of a theme as I'm talking through it right now. Dogs seem to pop up a bit. I had another company that sells biodegradable dog poo bags. So the variety is quite large. I think it's more about the business owner and the stage of the business. A business, if you've been in business for more than a couple of years, so you've got a little bit of traction and some runs on the board. If you've got more than a few team members, preferably probably less than about 20 team members, because I find the bigger you get, the harder it is to change the culture and introduce this idea of systems. But the sweet spot would be anywhere between about 3 and 15 staff. And the business owner, is the bottleneck. That oftentimes they've read books like the E-Myth and Traction and Scaling Up. they've read these books, they get all excited by systems, they've tried to do it, but they haven't quite managed to do it. It's the classic thing of, yeah, okay, I know they're important, but where do I start? And they think that they're the person that needs to create the systems, when the truth is the business owner is typically the worst person in the organization to be doing the documentation. You should, that's a little secret tip right there. If you split the role of systems creation into a two-person job, you've got the person with the knowledge and you record them doing the task, whether that's ScreenFlow or recorded on your iPhone or a GoPro. You just record it getting done, and then you have a separate person who does the documentation. If you do that, that actually makes it infinitely easier.
Yes, because that's the main person is the one that has the intellectual capital, and they're the ones that know how to do it. So pay a person minimum wage to follow you around, take notes or video or something. But yet that person is the thought leader. They're not the ones that should be documenting and stopping and starting. So that's a really, really good point you bring up there.
Yeah, you'll find that happens quite a lot, where your best team members are your busiest team members.
Yes.
So if you ask them to then document their systems and processes on top of that, they're already busy. They're not going to find time to do it. So you need to find, we call them a systems champion, and you identify the systems champion in your team who really leads this charge. You get someone who's detail orientated, who loves checklists, who is kind of already interested in this sort of thing. You get them to read something like the Systemology book, and you say, just follow the process.
Yep.
And then you get out of their way, you give them some space to do it, and they are the ones that then end up connecting with the team members when they're needed. And you're really capturing best practice. That's the other thing. Oftentimes when people get started with their systems, they try and make them just right and just perfect. And that stops them from actually getting something done. You're far better off finding the person who on the team does it the best, even though it might not be perfect, just the best, record them doing it, get that documented, and bring everybody up to that standard and get some consistency. Come back to the idea of optimization and making it perfect later. In fact, it's the last step in the Systemology process is optimization. You just want to get it down as it is, and that's far better to get momentum. Quit trying to compare yourself to McDonald's and thinking, I need to systemize like McDonald's. You don't need to systemize like McDonald's. McDonald's has been doing it for 60 years. You're just getting started. You need to systemize like McDonald's did 60 years ago when they were first getting started, not like McDonald's is today.
Well, have you ever read the book, The Lean Startup?
Yes, yeah. They've got some fantastic ideas there.
Yeah, you need the minimum viable product. Get that first thing going, because done is better than perfect. And then you get that in action, that system, that basic system. And then you start analyzing and go, hey, could we even make it better here or there? So you got to start somewhere. And then as that system starts giving the results of time savings, increases here and there, that's going to motivate the whole team. They're going to see it in action and working, and motivate them to stick with it as well as improve it along the way. So I think that is spectacular. So David, let's wrap up with this. What's the best way someone can come learn more, pick up a copy of your book, listen to your podcast, and learn how to get systems into their business?
Yeah, perfect. Best place is just to head over to systemology.com/book. Depending on when you're listening to this, you can sign up to the notification list, or you'll be able to just jump straight over to Amazon to grab a copy of that book. And from the website, systemology.com, you'll find the links to things like the podcast and social media if you want to dig a little bit deeper. But the book is definitely the best way to start, because it condenses all of my thinking down into a book that you'll buy for $20 or whatever it is.
Exactly. So wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on. It was really great talking to you about this great topic.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.